This is Kathy from Gadget Stop 321, and in today's video I'm going to be going through my pens that I have inked up at the moment, seeing which ones need to be cleaned out, and seeing if the ink is doing okay in some of these. Some of these pens have been inked up for 2 to 3 months, and sometimes when you have ink in a pen that long, it tends to get a little gluey. And when the ink gets a little gluey, it doesn't want to dry. So I'm going to be checking for that. And I've got an old Hobonichi Techo that I originally got to be a health and fitness tracker, and I kind of fell off the wagon with that, but now I'm really loving using this for writing samples and just playing with my pens. I come up here in the evenings a few times a week, and just all the inks that pens that I have inked up, I'll go through, do a writing sample, see if everything's okay. Basically what I'm going to do right now, and decide what I'm going to use for the next couple days, assign jobs to my pens basically. And the pen I'm going to start with is my Lamy logo, and I recently switched the nib on this pen. It came with a stainless steel nib, and I switched it out with the gold nib that came on my Lamy Studio, and I am loving this combo. I love this pen has a lacquer finish, so it's nice and grippy, and I'm using this to take notes at church, so I use it one day out of the week. This is a nice wet writing, super smooth 14 karat gold nib. It's extra fine. May not look like it. It's pretty broad and wet for an extra fine. And I've got it inked up with Diatramentus Sherlock Holmes. And I haven't had this one inked up too terribly long, but this is a really wet writer, so we'll see how well that ink dries. So that's my church note-taking pen, which as things are right now, our church has canceled in-person services, but we do go Facebook Live every week, so we're just going to be doing church that way for the foreseeable future. My next pen is the Pilot Custom 74. This is my journaling pen. This, along with the Lamy logo, these are two pens that when I start writing with them, I don't want to stop. They are just a pleasure to write with. This is a fine nib, and you notice this fine nib is noticeably finer than the Lamy Extra Fine. And this is Diamine Earl Grey. A nice off black, a black alternative. I really like it. I like dark saturated inks, and this isn't terribly saturated, but in this fine nib, I just like how it looks. When it dries, it's more of a graphite color. Next is my Sailor Pro Color 500, and I've been using this for grading papers. This one might be out of ink though. No, not yet. This is a medium fine nib. It's marked as fine on the nib, but the seller advertised it as a medium fine, and it writes like a medium fine. This is my favorite ink to use in this pen, KWZ Standard Grapefruit. Very nice. Another pen I enjoy using for grading, and actually this one serves a dual purpose because I've got it inked up with Iroshizuku Konpeki, so I can use it for taking notes as well as grading papers. This is my Kaweco Skyline Sport. It's an extra fine, and it writes broader than that medium fine. But this Konpeki's getting kind of dark in it. It's been inked up with this ink for quite a while. It doesn't feel gluey, but it does look more saturated than normal. So I'm curious to see if it fully dries. Let's see. Another pen that I've been playing with here recently is my Pen BBS 308. I've exchanged the nib. I put a Nemesign stub nib in it. And I've got Sailor Gentle Black. And I thought, yep, this is one that needs to be cleaned out. I don't normally like black in a pen that writes really broad, but I had that Pen BBS fine nib in this one, and it was just writing super dry, so I switched out nibs, and now that I know that nib is going to work really well in that pen, I can find an ink that I like using in a stub nib. I've got another pen with Sailor Gentle Black, my Kaweco Lilliput. This one hasn't been inked up very long, but I haven't used it much recently. I don't know if I've used it in the past week. Yep. No hard start. This ink just works beautifully in this pen. This is an extra fine Sailor Gentle Black. This is a nice ink to use on not so great paper. It doesn't tend to feather. It feathers less than many inks that I use. And so this is just a good all-around all-purpose pen. And Chris Hines did a review of the Lockbee pocket journal, and it's got a little interior horizontal pocket that looks like it would fit this a Lilliput just perfectly. Oh, I've been so tempted to get one of those, but I've been using my Midori passport notebook recently, and it's been working out really well for me, so I don't want to get too overloaded on notebooks and not end up not using any of them. But next I've got my Faber-Castell Ambition. This also has an extra fine nib, and you always hear about how smooth Faber-Castell nibs are, and this is a true extra fine. Most German nibs, they're extra fine. You know, it's kind of like the Kaweco extra fine, but this one is truly fine, and it is pretty smooth when you compare it to other extra fines. Now, it's not going to be as smooth probably as a medium nib, but if you compare it to other extra fines, this is nice. So this is my I just love all the colors that these Ambitions come in. This is, I don't like to get tons of the same pen, but this is one that I would be tempted to, because there's so many pretty colors that it comes in. And this is Graf von Faber-Castell Deep Sea Green. Now this has been in here a while, and it looks darker than it normally does, so it seems like maybe it's drying up a little, getting a little more saturated, but I do like saturated inks, so I still like this. I'm curious to see if it's going to smear though after this writing sample. Next is the Pilot E95S. A little bit of a hard start there. By Pilot nib standards, comparing this to other Pilot fine nibs, this one writes really wet. It's a different style of nib, so I don't know if that has something to do with it, but especially compared to that Custom 74, very wet. And this is Graf von Faber-Castell Stone Gray. Another really nice off black alternative ink. It's another one I'm concerned about how well it dries. Next is the Sailor 1911. And this is another one that I'm concerned with how well it's going to dry, because this is a really wet writer and it's been inked up for a while. This is the standard size with a medium nib. And this is Detrimentus Sherlock Holmes. This is my favorite ink to put in this pen. Not all inks pair well with this pen. It has to be a nice flowy ink, like Diamine Earl Grey is just makes this pen feel super scratchy. It just feels like a totally different pen. But this ink makes this pen very pleasant to use. My Pilot Pereira also has Detrimentus Sherlock Holmes, but I'm waiting for a bottle of Diamine Oxford Blue. That, I've discovered, is my favorite ink for this pen. This is such a smooth, fine nib. And the reason I'm excited to get a bottle of Oxford Blue is Oxford Blue is very similar to Sherlock Holmes, but it's got more red sheen to it. Sherlock Holmes tends to be a flatter ink in my experience. That's why I like it so much in this Sailor. But Oxford Blue has a red sheen to it, and I'm not a super fan of red sheen, but in this fine nib, you get just the right amount of red sheen. I like it. Now I do have Oxford Blue in this Sailor ProGear Slim, but it writes a little too fine to be able to see or be able to notice any red sheen. Let's see. This is a fine nib, but it's a little bit drier than the Pilot Pereira, so you just don't get the red sheen. It's a nice looking ink. I do like dark blue inks and fine nibs. I'm curious to see if this one's gonna dry. It's been in this pen for quite a while, but this is a drier writing pen, so we may not have any issues. I've got two more pens. They're both Platinum 3776s. This one's a medium. The next one's a broad. And these, yeah, no problems with the ink drying out in these with that slip and seal cap. These have been inked up for quite a while and you can't even tell. These are both inked up with Iroshizuku Murasaki Shikibu. Alright. And these two pens inked up with the purple are going to take the place of my grading pens when they run out of ink, which will probably be pretty soon. We're still going to be having classes. I'm getting word from my school that we're going to be doing classes remotely. We're still getting all that lined out. So I won't be using my pens probably for grading per se, but for planning out lessons. So let's go through. I'm going to give each one of these a little swipe and we'll see if any of them smear. Whoa, that one did. All right. So my Lamy logo did okay. It hasn't been inked up very long. And the Custom 74 with the Diamine Earl Grey, it's also been recently inked up. The ProGear, or the Pro Color 500, has been inked up for quite a while, and I could kind of see as I was doing my writing sample down here, I could see this shining. And it did. Right there, you see it smeared a little bit. But this, I don't even think there's any ink left in the cartridge. All the ink that it has left is in the feed, so I'll be cleaning it out soon. I'm kind of surprised. The Konpeki did good, no smearing. The Lilliput hasn't been inked up very long. I'm kind of surprised by the Graphon Faber-Castell Deep Sea Green. It has really gotten dark, but it's not gluey. Now this one I kind of thought, the Pilot E95S, these two both, these are really wet writing pens and they've both been inked up quite a while. So the ink is, I could kind of tell, was getting kind of gluey. The Prera hasn't been inked up very long. The ProGear Slim, I'm surprised, did pretty well. But it is a fine nib, writes pretty dry. And the Platinum 3776, the ink looks just like it did the day I put it in. It doesn't look like it's darkened up at all. So, all right. So I'll still use these inks. I'll probably use them for note taking and little planning, stuff I'm not going to keep that I don't have to worry about it getting smeared. I'm not going to write in a journal or anything with these two. All right, well that was interesting. If you found this video helpful, please please give me a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel.